Hi, everyone. This is Eliwood S. Gheist. Thank you, everyone, for joining, or for everyone who's viewing this afterwards. I'm here at Divine Realm Books in Camillus, New York. This is such a gorgeous space. It has been such a delight to be here. Thank you so much, Divine Realm Books. I'm going to be reading some selections from Bludeye Beach today. We're going to jump around a little bit just to kind of give a taste of the story. So we're going to start out with the prologue and our introduction of our main character, Edie Grayson. Bludeye Beach. The nightmare of reaching Bludeye Beach was almost worth the idyllic cliffside view. Gorgeous, right? Christopher said, staring out over the town with unearned pride. Barely a town, Kathleen thought, wondering how to discreetly handle the boob sweat stains on her brand new hiking shirt. The gentle breeze felt like summer, even if the ocean water still clung to its spring temperatures. After trudging up the steep hiking trail to reach said view, Kathleen pretended that if she could keep breathing it through her nose, she wouldn't seem horrifically out of breath, so long as she ignored the trilling whistle that accompanied every wheezing inhale. She had no idea why she'd agreed to this date. Hiking? She hated hiking. Bludeye Beach? She'd never heard of it until she had to drive 2 hours to the middle of nowhere. Christopher? Well, he'd been fine on their other two, far more normal dates. But Kathleen had been single for 40 years and a lot better off than fine. She really didn't need to lower her standards like this. Yeah, so pretty, she monotoned, pulling out her phone. Finally, she was getting a single bar of service. Clearly, her cell phone provider had also never heard of Bludeye Beach. I grew up in Nordenberg, the next city over, Christopher said, hands planted firmly on his hips. Loved coming here on summer break. No matter what kind of rumors there were, no matter what I did, it always welcomed me back. Yeah, Kathleen agreed, distracted. A flood of text messages were finally coming through, her phone vibrating like exclamation points to punctuate each one. She told her friends where she was going with Christopher, another casualty for modern women who date men on the internet, and apparently they'd had something to say about it. One message from her friend Kelsey jumped out. Oh my God, please tell me you're not letting a stranger take you to Bludeye. What are you doing? Kathleen jumped. Suddenly, Christopher was standing right in front of her, putting his hand over her phone screen. He wasn't much taller than her, but Kathleen was very aware of the 2-inch difference. Just checking in, she said, straightening her spine. You said you weren't going to be stuck to your phone all day, he coaxed. Sorry. Kathleen slid her phone back into her pocket. Christopher beamed at her, brightening once more. Come on, I think I remember where my favorite hiking trail used to be. He tore past her, bounding towards the forest bordering half of Bludeye Beach. Kathleen trailed after him, her reluctance only growing. Don't fall behind. I've got a surprise you'll die for, Christopher called back to her, vanishing into the trees. The shadows swallowed him easily, as if they'd been waiting for him. Kathleen only waited until they stepped into the cool shade of the pine trees before pulling out her phone again. 3 missed calls, 17 texts. Are you serious? What's Christopher's license number? Hello? Please pick up? Kath, I am not joking. Do you even know how many bodies they find there every year? Kathleen's thumbs hovered over an anxious reply. The signal was already gone. She was left standing on what was barely a path. Christopher had but completely bypassed a trailhead marker, following what seemed no better than the favored route of local wildlife. He was nowhere in sight. The thick foliage blocked her view from seeing another living soul. She distinctly did not feel alone. Christopher? Her voice was unrecognizable, high and shrill. There was no answer. She took a cautious step forward. The hairs on the back of her neck rose in prickling waves. The sweat on her body cooled rapidly, sending a shiver through her flesh. A low growl from somewhere in the trees. It was guttural, wet, far, far too close. Kathleen swallowed a frightened whimper. Her eyes wildly seesawed over the trees closing in on her, all dizzyingly identical. She held up her phone, ready to call 911 before remembering she'd lost service again. The screen danced in front of her eyes, her hand shaking too badly to use it. I'm leaving, she whispered. Christopher, if this is your idea of a joke. There was another noise, thick and gurgling. Something crashed through the trees, and Kathleen screamed. She stumbled forward blindly, branches tearing at her clothes and skin, the stinging blows unable to break her fevered panic. It wasn't until she shoved through a large bush that she stopped, dazed. Christopher lay in the dirt, blood gushing from the wound in his throat when he tried to speak. His legs jerked. A sickening gurgle slithered from his mouth. Behind Kathleen, a branch snapped. Chapter 1. Welcome to Bludeye Beach. Edie Grayson had never felt more out of place than she did at this exact moment. It wasn't the bus, or the station, or the parking lot. Those were all categorically normal. Instead, she was facing a challenge that none of her favorite fantasy novels had prepared her for. If Edie were to describe herself, she'd mention her curly brown hair that seemed to dominate first impressions she made, or her favorite feature, her soft brown eyes, but leaving out the heavy glasses. She would maybe describe her height, average, nothing unusual, but probably not her thick build. She liked listening to music and reading to articles in National Geographic. She hated gym class, scary stories, green beans, and movies where the female love interest never got the good lines. She didn't have a lot of friends, but sometimes, in group settings, she had the satisfaction of saying something really funny, usually on purpose. In other words, she was a perfectly average 15-year-old girl. At this moment, she would have given anything to feel average. Instead, all she could feel was a highly specific panic that she wouldn't recognize her father. Sure, other kids didn't know what their father looked like for any number of reasons, but she had met Teddy before. She'd seen pictures of him. She just hadn't seen him in person since she was 6 years old. Those pictures weren't that recent either. She had spent a little time with him when she was a baby before her mom moved back in with Grandma. Ouch. Thinking about Grandma stung a little too much still. Well, at least social anxiety helped to fixate on something other than grief. Edie could instead feel like she was at risk of failing as an estranged daughter. She had to walk out into the parking lot and immediately identify a man with which she'd shared a genetic link but few tangible memories. No doubt public shame and recrimination would follow when she failed. Edie sighed, hitched her backpack a little higher, and picked up her duffel bag. As Grandma said, if she was scared, she might as well do it scared. And now we're going to jump ahead just a little bit. Edie does, in fact, meet her father. It goes okay. So she's now staying with her father, Teddy, and getting settled in. And we are skipping ahead to chapter 2. Can I go to the beach? Edie asked after dinner. It was still light out, though the sun was well on its way beyond the horizon. Teddy paused. Edie wasn't sure if this was the sort of situation where she had to ask permission. Clearly, Teddy wasn't sure about that either. Does your mother let you go out on your own? He asked hesitantly. I walked to the library downtown, and that's almost a 2-mile walk, Edie replied. Technically, she was only allowed to do that on Saturday mornings, but this was summer break. What was the worst that could happen? At least, as long as she was back before dark. Just don't go on the water, by yourself. Especially by the bluffs. The currents can be dangerous, and tourists drown on occasion. A local girl did too a few years ago. I promise I won't go swimming. By myself, I mean. I definitely want to go swimming while I'm here. Do you know how to get there? Teddy asked in concern. Edie glanced at the front window. I can see the ocean from here. I figured I'd just walk towards it. Right, of course. Can you figure out how to get back? I thought I'd just walk back the way I came. Right. Teddy nodded. Well, clearly you've been raised well. Take your phone and call me if you need something. The cool breeze was welcome as it drifted through the warm evening, bringing with it the scent of the sea. It was a straight shot across an open park between Teddy's house and the beachside condos. There were only a few clumps of trees and a small playground to navigate through, and serial killers were unlikely to be hiding around there. This was better than crossing haunted bridges anyway. It was still hard to believe that she was here with her father. He'd been a constant sort of non-presence in her life. When she was a little kid, he occupied the same place in her brain as Santa Claus and the President of the United States. A distant, vaguely authoritative figure, but without enough information to form an actual opinion about him. She passed the cluster of condos to a public parking lot bordering by a laundromat and pizza place. Slice of the day. The laundromat's second floor looked like an apartment with a deck protruding over the store's entrance. She caught a glimpse of an older man lounging on a beach chair. He wore shorts, a dirty bathrobe, and nothing else, holding a cigarette and staring out at the sea. Blue smoke wavered into the darkening sky. Edie wasn't really eager to catch his attention. The sound of the waves melded with the evening insects as the scene opened up to a striking panoramic. The golden sand stretched beneath glass-green waves that crashed into creamy white foam with the friendliest sort of roar. The beach was nearly deserted despite the steady stream of people going in and out of Slice of the Day. The smell of marinara sauce, laundry soap, and sea salt swirled together. More than ever, Edie felt the weight of being so far from home, but this time, the excitement and promise of adventure was making her giddy. Standing in the water wasn't really the same as going into it, Edie reasoned, pulling off her sneakers. The sand was still warm as she tiptoed towards the surf, sucking in her breath to anticipate the moment when cold water kissed her skin. It took a few tries to pluck up her courage for the plunge. A little shriek leaped out when she finally stepped into the ocean. It was about as cold as she'd guessed, somewhere between polar Arctic ice excavation and the shower after Mom went first. She danced back to dry land and then made herself stand her ground as the surf raced back up again, foam swirling around her ankles while the sand beneath her feet flowed away in a watery rush. It was just as cold, but she was prepared for it. She relished the chills racing up her spine. Okay, I can do this, Edie promised herself, gazing out over the darkening horizon, even if she had to do it scared. Mindful of the falling dark, Edie didn't linger, shoving socks back onto her damp feet. Even slice of the day was clearing out. For a moment, Edie had an unnerving sensation of being alone on the beach, gazing at the edge of the world. Then she saw three people walking towards her, away from the bluffs. By the time Edie's shoes were back on, they were nearly level with her. Two boys and a girl, teens close to her age. One of the boys sported thick, dark shoulder-length hair. He had an arm around the girl's waist, helping her walk through a bad limp. She had wavy black hair pulled into a ponytail, and the kind of big dark eyes and sweetheart mouth that usually got leads in school plays and nominations for homecoming queen. The boy was lanky and tall, even hunched over, wearing beat-up jeans and a well-worn black hoodie. The girl was a little taller than Edie, and somehow even managed to limp gracefully. Her jeans were less beat up, but covered in colorful drawings. The second boy walked just a little ahead of them, staring at Edie unapologetically. He had a friendly expression, and frankly, while Edie was berating herself for the very thought, it would not be out of line to call him a teen hunk. He had broad shoulders and a nice solid build. His thick hair was shorter than the other boys, but wavy and full of glossy chestnut brown. His complexion was a flawless golden brown, and his dark eyes made Edie feel self-conscious without really understanding why. He wore a t-shirt and jeans with the knees cut out. Edie would have forgiven him if he'd bought those jeans pre-distressed. Hey, Teen Hunk said. Is everything okay? We heard a scream a little earlier. A scream? Edie asked. Or a yelp, maybe? The girl supplied. She and the other boy had stopped, watching her with the same scrutinizing curiosity. Yelling, possibly? Edie forced a wide smile, as if that would chase the embarrassment away. Yeah, sorry, that was me. The water's kind of cold. Did you fall in or something? The other boy asked. His eyes were almost the same color as the ocean, Edie realized, a dark, moody green, though in the dimming light they looked almost black. She suspected that if his long hair was pulled back, she'd see lines of piercings going up each side of his ears. Teen Hunk was all smiles and warmth, but the green-eyed boy was closed off and guarded. Just waiting, she explained. Her eyes drifted back to Teen Hunk, who smiled at her again. Are you guys local here? I just moved to Bludeye. I mean, not moved in. I just live here, for now, for the summer. The two boys exchanged a glance, but the girl started to smile. Yeah, we all live here, Teen Hunk said. I'm Manny. This is Milo and Kat. Are you vacationing here? No, well, kind of, I guess. My father, Teddy Coltsworth, lives here, and I'm staying with him for the next 6 weeks. I'm Edie Grayson. Mr. Coltsworth's really nice, Kat said politely. It's a small town, Manny offered. The locals pretty much all know each other here. A little too well, it could be suggested. I'm actually surprised there wasn't a general announcement that you'd be coming to stay here, Edie. Oh, so that's why the news van was parked out front, Edie said lightly. There was a moment's pause, and Edie could actually hear her pulse pounding in her ears in anticipation. And then, miracle of miracles, the three of them laughed. The relief almost made her giddy, and Edie risked asking another question of her own. Did you get hurt over on the cliffs? She asked Kat, who was still favoring her foot. Oh, Kat said, glancing down. Edie could almost see her thoughts spinning, even as Kat's voice became a little too casual. Oh my god, it's so stupid. We weren't really even at the bluffs, just kind of walking around on the beach. But I wasn't watching where I was going, and I stepped on this little rock, and it surprised me so much I twisted my ankle and fell flat on my face. I'm such a klutz. Only sometimes, Manny teased. Kat rolled her eyes at him, but Milo was watching Edie. For her reaction, she guessed. Edie had a very, very hard time believing Kat, with her perfect poise and graceful limp, tripped over a random small object. As one cursed with a weakness of spontaneous self-injury, Edie felt confident she could spot one of her own. As convincing as Kat was, the lie didn't seem to be malicious. Whatever the three of them were trying to hide, they probably just didn't want the new kid getting them in trouble. But hey, she could keep a secret, especially one she didn't technically know. Oh man, that really sucks. I do stuff like that all the time. I mean, this one summer, I was at science camp and my hair caught on. Actually, that story is not as interesting as it sounds, Edie said, her cheeks starting to burn like so much preteen girl hair too close to a Bunsen burner. Science camp? Milo repeated dryly. A few years ago, my mom's idea. It all grew back. It's no big deal. I only went a couple times. I'm definitely not a person who goes to science camp between the ages of 8 and 13. Sounds like something smart kids would be doing, Manny said generously. Pretty cool. Edie immediately found herself smiling back at him and giggling. She had no idea where that giggle came from. Kat cleared her throat. We really got to get Kat home, Manny said apologetically. So the scream, it was really you? No one's in trouble? Not that I know of, Edie said. I hope you feel better, Kat. Thanks, Edie, Kat said with what seemed like a real smile. You're heading back to Mr. Coltsworth's house after this, right? You'll probably want to make sure you get back after dark. Before dark. Oh, right, Edie said. I'm heading back now, actually. Good, Kat said, her smile widening. See you around. Watch out for those news vans, Milo said with a wry look before helping Kat limp along her way. Edie wasn't sure if he was making fun of her or not. Kat seemed like someone Edie could be friends with, and that'd be a little more complicated if her friends didn't like her. She only watched them leave for a few moments, not wanting to come off as too desperate. The thought fled, at least for a moment, when she caught a glimpse of a hem of Kat's jeans. Along the swirls and weird little creatures covering the denim legs, someone had drawn 2 eyes, one over each ankle. That is where we'll stop today. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for logging in and watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk about Bludeye Beach. And thank you so much. I will see you around.